Hello my dear friends. It's me, Igor Pogodin, and today's video is about who should consider going to therapy. Maybe you've asked yourself this question: should I go to psychotherapy? Stay until the end and I'll try to answer all your questions. Specifically, what do we bring to psychotherapy? Which of these requests are truly capable of changing us and which are more a way of escaping from our own lives? Because you might be surprised, but psychotherapy can also be used as a way to run away from your life. So a lot here depends on you, on your intentions, on what you put into your desires and your motives for going to psychotherapy. And to stay up to date with all the news on this channel and be the first to know when a new video comes out, hit the bell and subscribe to this channel. So my dear friends, let's get started. So who needs psychotherapy? You know, when students or just people in general sometimes ask me who needs psychotherapy, I usually say this: everyone who had parents. Because sooner or later, of course, people who come to therapy start talking about their grievances against their parents. And whether you want to or not, during psychotherapy, you will inevitably see that the roots of the difficulties you face today in life lie in your personal history, in your family of origin. So, of course, our parents tried to love us, but there are no perfect parents. We are concepts. Both parents and we ourselves are a certain set of concepts that we mistakenly believe ourselves to be. Being the entire greatness of the universe and what I call presence, we have confined ourselves within certain concepts, pretending and convincing ourselves that we are that very character who is living this life of ours. In reality, this is not the case. The character is an illusion. As long as you believe you are a character and your parents believe that they are a character, we keep making mistakes. We keep stepping on the same rake and taking actions that lead us around the same closed loop. And maybe your parents loved you, but they still messed up. At some point, I realized one thing: I'm going to mess up as a parent anyway. So it's better if I do it not out of anxiety, but with pleasure. That's why my choice is simply to love my children in my own imperfection as best as I can. It seems to me that the most imperfect parents, but who don't feel overwhelming fear and anxiety about raising their children the wrong way, are much better than parents who strive for perfection. All the general wards in psychiatric hospitals for psychotic patients are basically filled with the children of parents who strove for perfection, who desperately fought and struggled with themselves for the right to be the very best mother or father, but ultimately failed and suffered defeat. So, of course, on the one hand, parents give us the opportunity to live a safe life. They raise us, introduce us to the big wide world, and give us a shoulder to lean on, support, and everything we know about love is often connected to our parents. On the other hand, they are imperfect, so no matter what they do, it will still lead to consequences. As long as we are a concept, this will always happen. As long as you deny your true nature of presence, no matter what parents do, their children will end up in psychotherapy 20 or 30 years later because of it. You understand, right? If the parents didn't love them, the children will come and complain. If they did love them, they'll say it was impossible to breathe, it was just a total disaster. If they were rejected, they'll say it was extreme rejection. If they were accepted, they'll say it was the suffocation of codependency. I just can't set boundaries. I can't live freely. If they were beaten, they'll complain about that. If they weren't, they'll talk about having major boundary issues. Anyone who had parents, I assure you, will need psychotherapy. Well, sooner or later you'll discover in therapy, not that you'll just need it, but you'll discover in therapy that the roots are still somewhere back there. Now, jokes aside, let's really talk about what motivates people to seek psychotherapy. So if you're wondering whether you should go to psychotherapy, ask yourself, why do you want this? Well, of course, the most immature, naive, and childish motive is when other people think you need to go to therapy. But as I see it, until you find the motivation within yourself, I wouldn't move in that direction. Even if other people want you to go to therapy, first find the interest and motivation within yourself, and only then make that choice. Because when other people want something from you that you don't want, that's called coercion. Therapy is based on fundamental freedom, so no good therapy can happen through coercion. You will doom the therapy to failure. So if other people want to offload you onto psychotherapy, well, talk to them. What is it about the way you live your life that is so unbearable for them? Maybe they'll point out things that could become the basis for your own motivation for therapy. You might discover, like, oh, I'd like to work on this, or oh, I'm curious why I react this way and not another. That's it. So that's the first type of request. If you don't grow beyond this, you won't get good therapy out of it. The second type of request is the desire to change your loved ones. You come to therapy and say that everything is fine with you except that your mother doesn't suit you. If only my mother were different, everything would be great. Or my husband, or my wife, or my children. If only they changed, my life would be just perfect. This is also quite an immature request for psychotherapy. Of course, a therapist, well, certainly any request is valid, but with this kind of request, you are in for some tough days and some hard truths to accept. Because in reality, you will have to face the realization that the problem isn't actually with these people. You need to change. This often happens, when parents, mothers bring their children to psychotherapy, and then the therapist tries to find the right words to say, "Mom, maybe you should consider therapy as well." And a certain number of mothers, about 50%, now, maybe with the development of psychotherapy culture, this number is decreasing. But not long ago, roughly 50% would angrily respond, "How dare you suggest that to me?" They would take their child and leave. A bad specialist. He hinted at something, implying that I'm a bad mother. No, he's just concerned about you. In reality, if he works with your child in therapy and you don't attend therapy yourself, the progress your child makes in therapy will be minimal. This is very important. So if you want to change other people, you'll have problems as long as you keep wanting to change others. When you start psychotherapy with this motive, it will turn out that in fact, what you think are other people's problems is actually a mistake. It's not that the problem is you, but rather the problem lies in your way of living. You don't care at all about your own life because you're busy fighting with other people. In reality, your objections to others are entirely defined and motivated by your own dissatisfaction with yourself. Hatred towards others is actually your hatred towards yourself. So, as long as you want to change other people, you have personal issues that are worth addressing. During therapy, by the way, good therapy, you'll notice something like this. The people around you seem to get better. They become kinder, somehow more cheerful, more lively. They seem to become more open. This means you are changing. Because in reality, all the crap you see outside is actually your own personal crap. You're just not very willing to see it in yourself. And that's the bad news for you. Or maybe it's good news. So if you want to change other people, think about your own life. Go to therapy, start working on your own life. So when someone says to me, "I want to change my husband, what should I do?" Go to therapy. But why should I go? It's my husband who needs therapy. I assure you, with exactly the same energy you want to send your husband, you ought to go to therapy yourself. Let's take the word "should" out of it. The third type of request is complaints. When you complain about something you don't like or that doesn't suit you. This is also a naive, childish way. This is a way to complain about what you don't like in your life, a veiled way to refuse to truly live. In other words, bluntly speaking, you are currently rejecting your own life, and you have your reasons for that. In fact, the very fact that you're already complaining about your life is actually a good thing. It's a good reason to seek psychotherapy, but you will have to grow out of it. Because you absolutely do not have to be truly sick and suffer immensely in order to have the valuable opportunity to genuinely grow and develop. Moreover, as long as you are indeed sick and actively suffering, you are certainly not growing or progressing. Let me explain what I mean. Many years ago, I've been practicing psychotherapy for 30 years now, I discovered the following. My clients and group participants only start to change when their life becomes more interesting to them than what they are suffering from. Did you catch that? You can rewind or I can say it again. You only start to change when you let go of your problems with an iron grip, stop obsessing over them, and become interested in your own life. That's exactly when it happens. Often this happens after 6 months of therapy, a year, or even a year and a half. Sometimes people come in already with this motivation, but only if they're ready for it. Why? Because when you cling to your problems, illnesses, and symptoms, it looks like you want to get rid of them and fight them. But what actually happens? You take all your energy, which is needed for change, and spend it fighting against the energy that's already tied up and could be used for those changes. As a direct and unfortunate consequence, through the process of therapy, you ultimately end up tying up double the significant amount of precious energy that could have been constructively spent on personal growth and genuine happiness. But instead, regrettably, it all goes to merely maintaining the debilitating symptom and to enduring profound suffering in your life. Do you see how absurd this situation is? That's why a good therapist won't engage in this kind of conversation with you. Well, for example, it's important to me that the client is suffering from this or that and wants to get rid of it. I empathize with them, but still, from the very first session, I'm more interested in how they live, not in what they're suffering from. Do you understand? This is very important. I can tell you a story. It's an old one. This story happened about 25 years ago. It was a therapy group, where I was doing individual sessions. I came to this group as an invited facilitator. So over the course of 3 full and intensive days, it was something like a comprehensive 3-day workshop experience, I diligently completed about 15 individual therapy sessions. So during one particular session, a young woman approaches the group, she gracefully comes up, takes a seat, and I immediately notice that the entire group is already starting to quietly giggle and chuckle amongst themselves. So I ask her, "Well, tell me, what brings you here?" And she says, "I'll tell you, just don't laugh." And the whole group is just cracking up with laughter. I look at the group, then at her. It's quite a dissonance. I say, "Tell me." They're just telling their stories. And she looks at me and says something like, "I have hemorrhoids." And the group bursts out laughing again. Let me explain. It turns out that the group is cracking up not because the word hemorrhoids is funny or because they're making fun of this girl, but because right before their eyes, this is already the 5th or 7th session. This girl keeps coming to workshops like this one with the goal of curing her hemorrhoids, and that's understandable. Those of you who have suffered from hemorrhoids surely know that it's an unpleasant thing. I say, "All right, go ahead, tell me." She starts telling me about her hemorrhoids. And so I look at her. It's a very simple thing. I watch her, and she talks about it so matter-of-factly, with enthusiasm, with energy, with passion. That's it. And she keeps talking about it accordingly. And the group, well, some people are smiling, some have already fallen asleep. That's it. Some are watching attentively, of course, following along. I look at her closely and think, all I know about this lovely woman is her problems with her backside. All I know about this lovely woman is her problems with her backside. I think, is this really fair for our relationship and most importantly for her life? I say something like this. "Listen, could you please tell me, as I'm listening to you, can you answer this question? Is your hemorrhoids the most interesting thing you'd like to share with the man sitting across from you?" And she pauses for a few seconds and then bursts into tears. Do you know why? Because that's the only thing she truly sees as interesting for the world and for herself. Because her life doesn't exist beyond that anymore. And at that very precise moment in time, I then say to you, and do you truly think that this is entirely fair at all in any way? She says no. I say, maybe you could tell me about your life beyond the hemorrhoids. What else? Tell me about yourself. How do you live? It was very difficult. That is, for 30 minutes we tried to break through this moment. She talked about the interest in her life. What was interesting in her reactions, in her feelings, what she noticed in her own behavior, in her stereotypical reactions that stood out, and she was curious about where they came from, why, and how she would like to live differently. She started talking about her dreams. We just talked like that, just about all of this, period. That's where I ended the session. That was 25 years ago. The last time I saw this woman, which was about 7 or 8 years ago, she hadn't had a single hemorrhoid flare-up since that session. Not a single one. By the way, after that, she started studying therapy, became a good therapist, and even became a teacher at one of the Gestalt institutes. So what's the point of all this? The most important thing we have is our life. A Gestalt therapist is someone who works with a person's life, not with their illness or ailment. If you come in complaining about something that hurts, you have every right to do so. But my recommendation to you is to use therapy to restore your interest and effort toward your own life. The moment you start taking an interest in your life, you begin to see, discover, and feel things, and you return to your life to experience what you had abandoned for a long time. In other words, the problem is here. But the source of the problem, the thread it's hanging by, is 5 meters away, so to speak. You see what I mean, right? And the source, the point in Gestalt therapy, in fact, this idea actually comes from Gestalt psychology. The meaning of the figure is always found in the background. So, in reality, everything you suffer from is directly determined by how you live. But are you actually interested in how you live? That's the key thing. That's why the most powerful request for psychotherapy is, if you've reached the point where you're genuinely interested in your own life, you come to therapy to figure out some of your reactions, those that are typical, unexpected, or impulsive. And are you curious about how all of this works? What else are you not seeing or noticing? Are you interested in walking through your life and examining it? And you take the therapist as a guide, a curious, sincere, loving guide. And when you have respect and love for your life, and the therapist also has respect and love for your life, that's the best possible request for psychotherapy. So go to psychotherapy if you're interested in your own life. That's it, period. Of course, if you're in pain, you should also go to psychotherapy. If you're complaining about something, go to psychotherapy. But simply being interested in your own life is enough for psychotherapy. It's a powerful tool that helps people change, and you don't need to be ill to use it. I don't remember exactly, but I think it was Fritz Perls who said this beautiful phrase, "Gestalt therapy is too good to be reserved only for sick people." There's a lot of truth in that. You don't need to be sick, it's not necessary at all, to have the opportunity to go to psychotherapy. All you need is simply an interest in yourself. If you have that kind of interest, you're welcome. Come join any of our groups. I'll leave a link to our website in the description of this video. Come sign up. Our managers will tell you what groups we have and which one will be most beneficial for you. Come and take an interest in yourself. All you need is an interest in yourself. I can assure you your entire life is truly worthy of that profound interest. It is indeed fully and completely worthy. Did I perhaps forget something important here? All right then, I suppose everything is in order now. And in this regard, how do you satisfy that interest? Ask yourself, what are you curious about in your life? Maybe you'll notice some stereotypical reactions. Maybe you'll notice feelings that arise in the same situations. Maybe you'll notice that in some strange way, arguments or conflicts with close people or not so close people unfold according to the same scenario. The pattern there is very similar. You'll notice that every time you skip over the same feelings, for example, and you become curious, how can you stop skipping over them? It's interesting to wonder how they're structured. You'll notice that your close relationships aren't developing the way you'd like them to. And you become curious about what your contribution is to this whole story. You'll notice that you have dreams that for some reason don't come true in reality, or dreams that scare you, or, for example, desires that make you feel shame or embarrassment. You wonder why that is. After all, a desire in itself is wonderful, and that's enough for it to become a source for therapy. And that's enough of a reason to go there. I hope this video has supported you and taken the pretentiousness out of psychotherapy, which is, after all, a means of treatment. But it seems to me that, of course, there's this thought, as some people say, oh, well, I'm not sick enough to go to psychotherapy. Well, the word therapy itself is kind of scary. In reality, the word psychotherapy has only a very indirect connection to therapy as treatment. Of course, people do come to psychotherapy and their pain goes away. But psychotherapy itself is not a form of medication. It's not primarily about treating a specific condition or illness. It's fundamentally about restoring an individual's inherent right to live their own life fully and authentically. And that's why you don't need to be ill to go to psychotherapy. Moreover, the healthier you are when you start psychotherapy, the more you'll get out of the process. Well, that's basically how it works. If you need a recommendation for some great therapists, find me on any social network. For example, write to me in direct messages on Instagram, say, Igor, I want to join one of your groups, or psychotherapy. Ask me to recommend a great therapist and I'll be happy to help. Well, that's it from me, Igor Pogodin. If you think this video could be useful for your friends and acquaintances, go ahead and share it. Don't be stingy. Share it with your friends and maybe someone else's life will start to change too, just like yours did today or maybe many years ago, I don't know, for the better. Thank you and see you next time. Bye-bye.